What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting brought to you by MetaView. Sal, are you in the States?
Not right now, no. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay. You're in the office, though. Did you guys have an office?
Yeah, of course we do. Of course we do. What do you, well, not one of the work. Anyway, I shouldn't be critical of work from home people. I don't, but we tend to work from the office.
All right. Well, today we talked to Chandler Martin, who is head of recruiting at Zocdoc. What were your takeaways?
My biggest takeaway was something I almost feel a little bit embarrassed I hadn't thought about a bunch, was just the sort of consequences of indiscriminate outbound that he was talking about a bunch around, which I definitely have been guilty of a ton in terms of, especially when we're getting companies started, outbounding to candidates to try and get them to interview. It's especially pronounced for him when they're sort of targeting very certain types of talent, where he sort of talks about essentially having at-bats. There's only so many times you can, every time you outbound to someone, you are sort of burning your opportunity of future outbound to them. So I just thought it was super interesting to really sort of think of those as quite a scarce resource. Is these opportunities to get these folks' attention is very scarce, and you really got to mean it when you do it, which is, honestly a real food for thought for me.
I love it. Mine was predictive modeling anchors hiring managers. So this sounds kind of scary and big, but he actually popped up his screen. And it's just a quick and dirty model, which shows historical conversions, weekly deltas. And then that way, we could show if the search is either on track or off track, instead of relying on the typical hiring manager vibes, which is almost always, we're not moving fast enough. Why don't I have more candidates in the pipeline sort of a thing? And it kind of goes to the stuff we've been talking about, Sile, which is this stuff isn't that complicated. It sounds scary, but when you see his sheet, again, which is not the craziest forecasting model in the world, you're that makes sense. But by doing it at the beginning with the hiring manager, we're able to anchor them. And then we could track stuff week over week to make sure that we can just say, are we on track or off track based off of our historicals, which I think most companies are not doing.
Totally. It's sort of done all too rarely, right? What do you actually think the reason for that is? Is it just a confidence in the data thing? Is it just not enough time to think through even getting that together? Why don't more folks do that?
I just don't think people are thinking about it that way. Typically when a rec opens, somebody wants it hired yesterday. And so immediately we're playing defense. And we're always okay, let's rush to get this thing going versus taking a beat and saying, all right, we're going to run this search. It's typically going to take somewhere between 90 and 120 days. How do we make sure that our communications with the hiring manager anchor them into what it looks like at the company? And honestly, when I saw it, I had not done this in the past either. But, people talk about data. I actually think this is probably the most important data that people can use to make sure that vibes don't dictate the direction and feelings of the search. With that, you guys are going to love this episode. And without further ado, here's Chandler Martin. This is 10X Recruiting, a podcast from MetaView. Let's get after it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting brought to you by MetaView. All right, so Chandler, we have an interesting backstory. So a mutual friend, 6 months ago, was Nolan, you got to meet this guy. And I think he did the same thing to you. And then, I've been the one who's kind of preaching from the rooftops about showing up on time and being very thoughtful with your time. And I completely spaced on the meeting, which my bad. But then you and I started talking, we hit it off super fast. And I think we text every other day now. So shout out to my boy Ted for making the connect. I'm so happy that you and I became friends.
Yeah. And the irony is I was watching that episode right as you were ghosting me. And I was I hope at some point we'll be able to laugh about this. And here we are recording ourselves laughing about it.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we're friends. And about once every week or so, someone's Nolan? So I've gotten cooler by association. I'll take it.
Yeah, that's a signal that what they're actually saying is oh my God, I didn't realize you were this insane for including that person in your contact list. But anyways, I digress. So you have recently told me that you're using predictive models to improve the recruiting quality and candidate experience. Can you elaborate and say more to the audience about what you mean?
So we built, and I'll show you this in a second. But when I started thinking about this, there's two core constituencies that need to be served by something like a predictive. The first is the recruiter. First and foremost, a recruiter needs to they have difficulty understanding, like, what is a search even supposed to look like? How do I organize my time? How do I think about time in step versus time to hire? But the other thing that they really need is, especially in a talent density landscape, which we're in right now, hiring managers sometimes think candidates are infinite. It's just like this babbling brook of candidates, and they need a mechanism to show how finite talent pools can be. The second constituent is a hiring manager. And you and I have talked about this. In the absence of communication is doubt. How many times have we heard from hiring managers, like, what is this recruiter doing? Like, there's not enough activity. And I think that being able to articulate, like, here's the process, here's how we think it's going to work, really kind of allays a lot of concerns. And so this is far from perfect, by the way, to your audience. I hope you'll bang this up if you get into it. And I hope applicant tracking systems out there, if you're listening, I'll work for free, but we should build this together. This could be really helpful. So let me show you this thing. It's nerdy, far from perfect. All right. So there's a couple tabs. I'm not going to go through all of this, but at the beginning of a search, if you're a recruiter, and we don't do this on every search, but the kind of talent density searches is where I think you really can and should use this. What's your role? We've identified a couple different types of roles at Zocdoc. You could build this however you want. But there's a distinction between kind of complex searches and non-complex searches. You benchmark how long it's going to take. What's your target hire date? When are you starting? And then what percentage of inbound? This could be 0, it could be 50, it could be 25, it could be 100%. But if it's a talent density search, I got a clue for you. It's probably going to be 0% inbound.
Why do you think that is?
I think that if you're talking about a senior ML engineer, let's just do the math. There are ecosystem wide, there are about 44,000 excellent senior ML engineers out there. They don't have to look. If they're in your inbound funnel, maybe just back channel a little bit, right? Like, figure out what the hell is going on there. And I don't want to be reductive. Candidates apply inbound. But for our talent density searches, we're finding that most of the time we just have to go to those candidates.
100%.
So this is benchmark data. This is a little bit more fuddy-duddy. Let me zoom out. But what you would do, this is example data. But what we do is we bounce down. So we pull comparable searches, what the conversion has been for those types of searches all the way through the funnel. And so you kind of benchmark, all right, tech, inbound, outbound, hard to fill, inbound, outbound. So these are just kind of your model conversions that you'll use. And once again, this can be hypothesis driven. Like, you could use ChatGPT to try to understand kind of market conversions. A hypothesis is better than nothing, right? Like, start with a hypothesis and iterate. And then what we do on a regular basis is we, once again, fake data, but we update per week. What is the activity that's happening week over week? That happens here. These are your deltas. A lot of hiring managers are like, yeah, but like, what did you do week over week? Greenhouse doesn't show you week over week data, which is a little crazy. And so I'm just kind of teeing this up. The thing that the stakeholders care about is right here. This is your kind of macro data. On a weekly basis, you'll show your search. I want to talk about timeline because this is one thing that I think recruiters really don't think about. But this is your activity. So if I'm sitting down if I'm hiring for Nolan, I would say, hey, listen, we're doing a senior ML search. Tippity top of the funnel, this is 26 candidates introduced. For the entire search, you're going to take 16 hiring manager screens. We need 2 offers to get to 1 hire. 50% offer acceptance rate in this market is sometimes even a little frothy. And then week over week, I'm going to Nolan and I'm saying, here's where I am, right? Like, here's where I am search to date. We've added this, like, what activity is needed per week over the term of the search, and then what's your run rate? Because we're just showing people data. They're like, all right, what's the so what here? And they always say, are we on track or off track? And so This is a way of understanding that. The thing that just to nerd out a little bit more, and then I promise I'll shut up, is recruiters can't conceptualize, not always, but a lot of times recruiters can't conceptualize the marriage between time to hire and time and step. So we benchmark it at 90 days, but time and step or time and stage is 30 days. A lot of times recruiters don't realize that means you have 60 days to find your candidate, right? You don't have 90 days to fill your search. You have 60 days because it takes candidates 30 days to get through the process. By the way, 30 days is not good. You should always be faster. I just did that because I'm bad at math. When you start breaking it down by activity and then, oh, I actually have 9 recruiting weeks to find my candidate, and things like run rate, even though this is so far from perfect and I'd like to build 9 million other things here, this is a way of adding some transparency and a little bit of predictability, because a hiring manager is going to be taking 2 screens per week. But sometimes they think that they should be flooded with activity. The way searches go, it's just not always going. It's not always going to be that way. So I hope people will beat this up. But this is what we built, and I think it's a step. It's not the solution.
Okay, so keep this up right now because and by the way, you guys should be looking at your screens. Like this is like my dream guest who's going to like show their work, and then we can click in on it. So for the projected column,
Yeah.
Chandler, where are you guys getting that data? You said that there was like sometimes you're like making a hypothesis, but I'm assuming most times what you're trying to do is look into your ATS, pull up historical data, and use the historical data to fill that in. Is that
That's
right?
exactly right. So we pull, depending on how many searches we've done, the past 1 or the past 2 years of comparable searches. And for like a tech hard to fill, we just choose the ones that have been like extremely arduous and difficult. And we use that conversion as the benchmark.
And this is where it feels like recruiting ops teams can really kind of like flaunt their feathers, because this is actually what is super helpful to baseline, to your point, the recruiting team and the hiring manager on what reality has looked like historically. And then we can take our learnings for like what is going on in today's market and apply those learnings on top of that historical reality to then begin to at least, maybe not like fully predict. I think that's probably too strong of a word.
Yeah.
But at least to preview like what to expect as we open up a role. That way, like if there are misaligned expectations going in, we can have that conversation at the outset. Is that how you guys think about it?
That is. And it's a weird coincidence. The person who introduced us really helped codify this in my mind. We were doing an
Yeah.
executive search, and Ted has an agency called Opal Search. He's a really great guy. But we were working an executive search, and he did something that was so smart, which is he mapped the entire market, and he went to us and he said, listen, the surface area here is this big. And then derivative of that, the percentage of people who will talk to you is this big, which means you got like 20 cracks at the bat. And that, like, when you start doing it that way, it creates a couple different things. Like A, you're only going to put your best people on that search. B, all those people always need to be selling. And C, this phenomena of learning on candidates, like I'm going to learn on candidates to figure out what I actually want. We're not playing that game anymore, right? Like you cannot do this first, second pancake stuff in a talent density landscape. You've got to know what you're looking for, and you've got to operate kind of A game 100% of the time. And so this is what we're trying to accomplish. And to your point, definitely not predict. We're not telling the future here, but it's just a frame of reference to start from.
Yeah. And, to your point around like talent density being the like topic du jour right now, I think every single company has like used this phrase at like at one point or another. Like this really helps clarify the thinking of like, if you do want the very top of the mountain, like the best talent available, this is the map, right? This is how many people there are. I sat next to Owen O'Toole about a month ago, who is the head of VC practice at Riviera Partners. And we kind of got joking about these like $200 million offers. And Owen goes, do you know how many like actually like real AI researchers there are in the world? And I was like, no, how many? And he goes, 844, right? And so it immediately then, like, I actually get Mark Zuckerberg's thought process. Like the moment I understand that there's that much, like that level of scarcity rather in the market, I can now begin to think about like, okay, this is why maybe one of the top 40 would get an offer like that, because not only can they help like build the foundational LLM, but maybe they can also bring other people in that they know that they're homies with. And it starts to rationalize things that seem absolutely crazy to normal humans.
100%. And it's, we see this, those are like the net new things, but people be like, I want the best senior software engineer. So let's do the math. 1.2 million in this country or SSEs, predominantly split between New York and San Fran, SF. But then if you're talking about 2%, that's 24,000 people. If you're talking about, 5%, that's 60,000 people. And guess what? Everybody wants that talent. And so it's almost a beautiful forcing function that we care so much now about talent density, and that we're experiencing this incredible AI revolution, because the intersection of like data, making every single part of your stack better, and just wanting the best of the best is going to force the recruiting function to really, really, really evolve. And onboarding, which is a separate HR Heretics episode.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But okay, so let's take a minute then. So, right, you sit down with your hiring manager and, let's say it's, for the easy use case, which is like, we're at Zocdoc, we want to hire a senior software engineer, and they go, we care about talent density. And you go, great. Like, I love that. There's only 20, like the top 2%, there's only 24,000 of these people in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Okay, what then happens? Like, what's the second order of that conversation for you guys to actually start to be able to be like, we either want this talent or we don't, and here's the activities and behaviors we need to exhibit. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. And I'm going to stop sharing this just because I want to see more of your
Perfect.
mustache. So I think that there's like 3 distinct things that you have to think about in search in general, but for talent density, there's the kind of pre-start rituals, there's the in-flight experience, and then there's what you do after a candidate has said yes. And like, these are a series of choices and trade-offs. So pre-start is SSE is a known commodity for us, but if we're really doing this, it's like, all right, we need to go back and make sure that this is exactly the job description. These are exactly the competencies, and that we've got the absolute best people possible. In fact, we did this with product, and we're like, do we have the best people possible on this search? Are we running it the right way? What's our time and step goal? Because by the way, like on average, it takes people 5 days per step. And if you really want to win this talent, it's speed and experience. Like, you're not always going to win on comp, but if you can get there quicker and the experience is delightful, you at least have a chance. But
Speed doesn't always mean, though, like move as fast as possible, right? It means like basically matching the experience that the candidate wants with where they are at in their lives. Like, for some people, you got to warm them up a little bit. For others, it's like they have competing offers on the table, and so we have to go fast. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And I mean, you especially see this in exec search, where you're like, are we way too thirsty? And so there's the art and there's the science of it. But the big thing is just, it's comp. And I think that what folks don't realize is this is the best time to have comp problems, because you've got Pave, you've got all these tools, you've got pay transparency, which a lot of people are not bouncing down. Like, who are we recruiting against, and what are their bands that are publicly listed? And then the last thing is, like, they're not thinking about their levers and their value proposition, right? Like, everybody wants to RTO, but if you're competing against everyone and there's 20,000 people in a pool, is location a lever? Like, what are your actual levers? And everybody's a rocket ship. Everybody's growing. Everybody's .ai. Like, you have to think about what your specific value proposition is. So that's all pre-start. And then in flight, like, you've got to make the experience really, really, really good. But if someone's saying we want the best of the best, you've got to start with, here's what that means, and are you willing to do it, right? Like, are you willing to break a band? Are you willing to trade equity for cash?
Totally.
Because some people just want cash. They don't want,
So it's like you're bringing the hiring manager to the light, right? It's like, hey, like, this is great. You're telling me you want this thing. Like, let me tell you what it's going to take. Which, like, I actually really love your framework of pre-start and in-flight. It's pre-start, in-flight, post-close, right? Is your framework, which is super good. So let's click in for a moment on more of the pre-start stuff, because I can imagine having this conversation with the hiring manager. And actually, I've had this conversation with hiring managers many times, which goes, yeah, no, we want the purple unicorn. And then my way, which has been a little bit more rudimentary than yours, is they go, great, we're going to source together on LinkedIn. And like, let's just go take a couple days. We'll both come back and see who we find based off these requirements that you said. And then always they come back and they go, oh my God, there's only like 15 of these people. And I'm like, great. Like we probably need to expand the pool like very quickly. So I can see how they can get to the light very fast. But the comp thing is kind of hard. Like the comp thing, I always find is like the most sensitive conversation to have because we already have people in the building who are like doing the thing that we admire, but typically we're like underpaying them and we're not really like saying that thing, but like we're learning in the market that they're actually like valued way more. And instead of like doing the obvious thing, which is paying those people more, typically what we do is we try and convince other people that they should take the same deal. So like just talk about comp for a second and how are you using this to basically align expectations there?
Businesses extol the virtue, executives extol the virtue of being forward looking all the time, with the great exception of the people department. I mean, it just is the way it is. And like it or not, comp is off until you do a serious effort to go and get exceptional talent and you realize you've got a problem. A lot of times people wait for big attrition spikes to happen before they really understand what is like the fundamental issue that's driving that attrition. It's just like you want to be proactive in business and we always wind up being reactive in people. That's why I'm so glad that this forcing function of like recruiting and talent density is happening, because our best performing folks at Zocdoc are folks who came up through the internship, and these are they get promoted more quickly. They they retain longer. They're more culturally attuned to the things that we actually care about. And if an average merit increase is 3 to 4%, the average national merit increase is 3 to 4%. They've been here for 7 years. You could do the math on what's happened with wage inflation. And so like the truth of the matter is the great organizations recognize they have a problem, and then they have to go and kind of eat that elephant one bite at a time, but they make it right. And, that's something that we've done, but we had, I think everybody's running into this is like, okay, got this, this and that.
Yeah. The thing that used to drive me just insane was we would have these people, especially like the younger ones, and probably like because it was me, I was like super biased that like we should be doing more of this, was like, okay, we gave somebody a shot, right? We gave them a crack and they hit it out of the park. And then we continue to hire people that at basically at the same level, but because they have all of the internal cred, right? Like they've gotten wins, they've built relationships, they know where all the dead bodies are. Like we don't reward them for that. And instead we just continue to reward the outside. And I think honestly, the best part about this market right now, given that everyone is focused on talent density, is like you could just go out and figure out what you're worth by interviewing.
Yeah.
And that used to be the Netflix way of doing things, which is super imperfect, but it kind of feels like honestly, like the best way of like figuring out like, where is the clearing price for your skill set? The only way to actually go figure that out is to go interview for jobs.
That's right. And I mean, I don't know your opinion. I think that everybody is talking talent density, and just about everyone, and ourselves included, sucks at it. It's like a conceptual thing, but they haven't brought it. It might live in the fiefdoms of people. It might live in the recruiting stack, or it might live in the kind of performance management stack, but it doesn't live in the broader, like holistic people teams. No one is doing talent density start to finish at excellence yet.
Not yet. It's an opportunity. Okay. So I want to go back to like, okay, so now we've basically aligned everyone's expectations at the outset. Now we want to go out to market. Talk about sourcing for a minute. Like, so these people, I'm running 2 exec searches right now. And what I consistently hear from the top tier candidates is I'm getting hit up every day, right? And like literally like it makes me feel good about myself, but I think it's like actually like a hard thing to get right, which is like the only reason I responded to you is because of your messaging. How do you think about sourcing? How do you think about even just getting these people on the phone?
Yeah. And listen, I mean, I could pull up our LinkedIn response rates, and you could see a clean differentiation between what the kind of super complex density searches are and others. So we're not getting an A++ on here. But the guidance that we're operating with is like, recruiters need to check their ego at the door. Like they might not be the person for the outreach for the senior ML engineer, right? That might be a CTO. That might be a CEO. And these should be cadenced searches. It's actually interesting. I've been talking to recruiting shops, and there's so many recruiters who just run a one sequence campaign in LinkedIn, which is nutty. Like you see great response rates on second, third outreach. Like you have to be persistent in this market.
Yeah.
And then our kind of thinking is, because we've done so much exec search lately, is like treat these like exec search, which means that the messaging is tailored. Like it actually doesn't feel like a blast. It doesn't feel like you're part of a prospect pool. Like it needs to be as tailored as possible. And then if you can network into a person instead of just the like cold outreach, let's network into that person. Still though, I mean, like you've got to have a differentiated message. And Zocdoc is an incredible company. I don't think people realize like how great a story we're sitting on because we've been around for a long time. But we've got to compete against .AIs, right? Like we've got to compete against, some really, really big players. So this is not easy. There's not a magic bullet, but there are things you could do that increase the probability of success. And just doing blasts, it's the same thing. You got 20,000 candidates.
Yep.
Don't learn on them. Like go craft.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this because I've been having to do cold outbound and I haven't done it in like 7 years. And so it's been really fun to like get back into the weeds. And so here's like the framework for what I'm learning is the top talent, all of their inboxes are completely destroyed with inbound from other recruiters. And so what I'm finding is like what needs to be true is multiple things. So number one, who are you? Like, and why should they talk to you?
Yeah.
And to your point on the not having ego for recruiters, I actually think the better framework is like not having ego from the hiring manager or the CTO or C-level executive that they shouldn't be sending the message. Because in this framework, it becomes super clear. So it's like, who are you and why should I waste 30 minutes of my day to talk to you? The second thing is details around the company that make it interesting. So like, great. You're reaching out about this specific thing. What like trips my human desires to want to learn more? Like what is making my curiosity brain light up and go on fire and be like, oh my God, like this is like actually interesting. Like I definitely was not thinking about a new job right now, but I just want to like figure out and learn more. And then the last thing is social proof. So like, like this is once I started learning about what marketers do, it started to really to completely warp my brain and how I actually message things and package stuff. So like, do you have LeBron James as your investor? Like, are there things that other humans would be like, that's dope. Like that makes sense. And that those three things in the framework for me have been super effective to get high response rates. But I'm curious, like, if you have like a, mid-level recruiter who immediately doesn't meet threshold number one.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think about that?
By the way, I love the social proof thing. Like I don't buy a pair of tweezers without reading reviews on LinkedIn, on Amazon. And so I think that is so brilliant. Like definitely want to steal that because now more than ever, people want social proof before making any decision. Like no one goes into a restaurant cold anymore. It's actually kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
But listen, for the mid-tier recruiter here, I'd like to think that Zocdoc is a pretty good established recruitment team where we are inherently funnel driven and numbers driven. And so like just the diligence you do before starting a search really is the data is the arbiter. It's like, oh my God, this is going to be brutal. How are we even going to tackle it? Like you should have that oh shit moment before the search kicks off, not during the search, right?
Yeah.
Because by the way, people who have jobs up for forever also spooks candidates. So just in case there's any of you out there who have had a posting up for 6 months, give it a breather.
Refresh it.
Yeah,
Refresh it.
Give it a breather.
Turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah.
One of the things you and I recently talked about was how the best candidates are playing offense. So kind of like we've been talking a lot about the internal stuff. Tell me about what does that mean? Like, what does it mean for a candidate to play offense?
Yeah, I think that in a density landscape, it's weird because we lived through the excessive exuberance of 21, where like all candidates had abundant choice from interns all the way to senior hires. Now we're seeing this kind of binary reality where density candidates, density eligible candidates have all the choice in the world. And then there's a whole ton of like entry level folks who are really hurting and it's tough, right? But for those who are heavily recruited, they know that they can kind of pick their next place. I think that they're looking at the total package. They're looking at the compensation, of course, but they're looking at the culture. Like, what is it actually like here? They're looking at the outcome on the other end of this decision. Like, am I actually like high probability going to see a big generational wealth changing outcome? Do I like the people? And not sure if you're seeing this too, but like where some candidates may not ask questions, may not poke and prod, like these guys are shopping us just as much as we're shopping them. Like it is the kind of like recruiting enlightenment two-way street where they assess us, we assess them. And I think that means it is an opportunity to differentiate yourself in a recruiting process by being intentional about how quickly you go through the process, but also giving them a extremely delightful experience where you're doing great discovery. You're figuring out the stuff they care about. You're selling at every step. You're getting comms out to them through process so they're not waiting and wondering where they're at. You're briefing them. You're telling them about the competencies. If you hear a flag, you're aligning them with someone who can resolve that flag. Like, you can really differentiate yourself right now by not, like, they should still feel like they can lead some of this, but like, you want to get ahead of those things, right? Like, you want to contemplate the things they care about so they don't have to, because a lot of shops are just not doing this. You know, they're waiting 6
Yeah.
days. They're not sending follow-ups. They don't ask the basic question, like, Nolan, what are your 3 non-negotiables? Like, what are the things that must be true to work here? They don't know that. They're not value selling through the process. Like,
Yep.
so like we should be playing as much offense as they're playing offense. And that's what that's what we try to do. We've created these candidate interview guides. We prep candidates. Like, I think that we're doing very white glove stuff to try to get ahead of this.
Yeah, I feel like the term candidate experience has been totally bastardized to basically mean like, are we meeting the SLAs?
Yeah.
Right. And it's so inhuman the way recruiting is done at most companies today. And I don't know why this is. I don't even want to ideate as to why it is, but it definitely feels like we've lost a lot of the humanity in recruiting. And so I always tell people, outside of like who you marry, where you live, what you do for work is the third most important thing, right? And this is where like so many of my friendships have come from, my opportunities in my career, the stuff I love to do. Like it really matters. And so when I think about like the recruiting experience, there's all of these like little tactics that people do. What I'm learning, getting back into it again, is like, the lowest hanging fruit is to shorten the feedback loops. So like there's a lot of different feedback loops in recruiting. One is like candidate met with X person. Well, after that meeting, what did X person say and what did candidate think? By the way, both of those things really matter.
That's right.
Right. And can we just shorten the timeline to just understand like what's up? And then basically taking the decision tree as opposed to, well, this is the next step and follow the process. Taking like this is what I heard from the candidate and this is what their open concerns are. And maybe we have to break process and do something different for that person. I feel like recruiting has gotten very robotic and has lost a lot of the human element where I think a lot of the alpha is today.
I worked with an executive recently on a search, and he was so good at this. And he even helped me reframe how, because I'm a funnel guy. Like, I love the data, I love the process. And he helped me rethink this. And you're exactly right. Like, when you do those follow-up calls, hey, how was your experience? And you get a flag, the first thing you should think of or question or whatever, like, do you need to put a board deck in front of them? Do you need to talk financials? Is there a person who they have like a weird dynamic
interaction with?
Back, not just like mushing them into the next step of the process. And by the way, candidates will also tell you just incidentally stuff that's interesting. Like, we hired a CTO. She loves baking. She loves baking bread. We sent her ancient grains, some bread baking stuff, and in a cookbook, right? Like there's these things like people love when you listen. People love when you actually care, and it has to be genuine. We do. But like there's so much stuff that people give you that you just like automatically pass over because you're thinking about the task, the next thing, like what, like where you're going. So I completely agree with you. Like it has lost its humanity, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. And it's a huge opportunity for people to stand out. Like that's what I'm learning. Like the reframe is, instead of like, oh, all of recruiting is like this, it's like I could just do it differently. And I can make real relationships with people. And in the era of AI, we can actually scale these things. Like before, I'd have eight conversations in a day, and I'd be like trying to collate my notes and like forgetting all the shit that I talked about. Like that stuff's over now, right? There's no excuse not to leverage this new tech to essentially like scale your ability to make relationships and understand where people actually are and what they're telling you.
I completely agree. And then also to just be more efficient, like MetaView. Like if you want to improve your time to step, like you get a MetaView, your scorecards get done quicker, blah 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 blah. Like we're in the most exciting era of our profession that we've ever been in. And so there's going to be people who make it even more mechanical and even less human. And then there's going to be the people who are like, oh my God, I got 40% more productive. Let's reinvest that all into the human experience of search.
Yep, exactly. All right. The last thing I want to leave us with, Chandler, is you said something earlier that I kind of just like I wrote down. You said, in the absence of communication is doubt. And you and I have been like hate texting about this because I feel like it's like one of the things that drives both of us nuts. So can you give a couple of examples of this?
Let me give a pop culture example. Who was it? I'm so bad with the Royals.
Sile would know. So we can have him review this after the
Yeah,
fact.
I can't remember is it Kate? There was one member of the royal family who basically just went offline for
It was Kate.
it was Kate.
Yeah.
Okay, for some period of time, and the amount of insanity that ensued around the total universe, from affairs to not alive to whatever. And I think that was actually a really good use case in when people don't know what's going on, they're left to their own devices and terrible things happen. So let's take that into a candidate context. You're super busy as a recruiter. You've got a great candidate on the hook. They interviewed on a Wednesday. Time flies by. Maybe you didn't get a debrief done. Maybe blah, 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 blah. It didn't happen. And next thing you know, it's Tuesday and they haven't had any conversation. In their head, they have already gone from feeling great about it to, oh my God, this went terrible. Oh my God, they hate me. Oh my God, they have another candidate. You know what? I hate them. I don't like them. I don't actually like that opportunity. I'm not interested in it anymore. And then if you're like, oh my God, we just had the debrief, it went great, they have to resell themselves on you. And the thing I say to my team is like, imagine that this is your loved one. Imagine this is your brother, your sister, someone you care about, and you made them wait 5 days to hear back from you. Is that how you want them to feel, right? Like humanize that. And the same thing is true with your stakeholders. Like our recruiters are almost always working really hard. There's no doubt about that. But when you only get a weekly connect with a hiring manager and they don't know what's going on, they're just going to start doubting you. It's just the way it is. Yeah, some will inherently trust you, but a lot of them will come to me and be like, I don't think the search is going well. And I go and look at the pipeline and I'm like, we're ahead of schedule. But they don't know because we didn't communicate. And so like my adage is just like, if you're not communicating, people are doubting what's happening. And so you've got to find a way, even if it's, and you talked about this online, what is it? The no update?
Yeah, I learned. I was just about to bring this up. So I reported the chief business officer at DoorDash, and he had a term for it. He called it the no update, which basically means like, if you don't have an update, that is your update. Tell people that thing. Like, just tell them that, like, hey, I don't have an update. Here's why. Here's when I expect to have another one. And by the way, that takes 15 seconds. Like, it's literally the easiest thing to do, is just to fire off one of those, like, hey, we were supposed to debrief today. Johnny got sick. So like, we're going to have it in 2 days. I'll circle up with you right after. Like, it is literally the easiest form of human communication that I think most people just completely flake out on. And to your point, I actually think it's a little bit, for me, it's like a little bit more poignant, which is like in the absence of communication, humans tell ourselves the worst version of the story. Like we just assume the worst thing. Like this is like with my family,
Yeah.
like, my wife's at a dinner last night. I'm like, who is she with? Like, what is going on here? And like, obviously, I've been with my wife for 16 years. Like, come on. But that's what happens. Like, you haven't texted me in 4 hours. Like, what the fuck is going on with you?
Yeah. I think it's just like an innate, like, it's like you're just protecting yourself against the worst case scenario. But the problem is you start to believe it. And once doubt is injected into a surface area, it's hard for that to stop. You know what I mean? The fact that
Yeah.
you made someone doubt in the first place, then they're automatically thinking that way. And so I'm glad you and your wife are still together. I hope that dinner.
I have one right now. This person definitely doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can talk about it in an anonymous sort of way. But we have one right now with a candidate to where we had sent the take home, and this person set an expectation on when they were going to get back. And then that expectation slipped. We heard nothing. So then I checked in, and this person was like, oh, like, I had this conference and this thing. I'm like, okay, like you could have just told me, like, before me having to pry it out of you. Right. And so then it becomes a demerit on that person's ability to communicate. And one of the things I'm telling the hiring manager right now is like, when someone reveals their character, believe them.
Yeah.
And this is a character trait.
We have a recruiting adage. I learned it from someone, which is a green flag can turn to a red flag, but a red flag never turns to a green flag. Every time we lose someone or there's like early attrition, we go back and we're like, you know what? There's a soft yes that we vetoed there. And it's the exact thing. It was the flag that everybody had. People didn't.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, not to go too deep on that, but when someone does something like that, okay, that's it. Like you
believe them. And by the way, give the feedback. So like, that was the conversation I had last night with this person. I was like, hey, like you could have just told me this. Actually, you should have just told me this, because we've been left wondering, where the fuck did you go?
Yeah.
Like, are you not that into us anymore? Like, again, I want to just express to people how important human dynamics are not going anywhere. Like in the era of AI, they actually become more important, because I can tell when you wrote something with AI slop. Every time, the thing that's like driving me nuts now on LinkedIn, just to like get on my soapbox for one second.
Please go there with you.
I can tell immediately when something was written with ChatGPT.
Oh God.
And with no edits from you. And I just immediately think like, you're a loser. I never want to hang out with you ever.
Oh.
So don't do this stuff. Like this is where the alpha is in today's world, is like, you guys have opportunities to be dope human beings, because the robots suck at being human and the humans are the best at being human.
Yeah. Like if it gave you 30% increase in productivity, reinvest 10% of that into making that AI slop actually look credible and real. Just save 20%.
Exactly.
Everyone's
Yes.
happy.
Yeah, reinvest it, right?
Reinvest
it into being a human. Chandler, this is like one of my favorite conversations. You totally delivered the goods today. You've also been like putting out super dope stuff on your LinkedIn. So where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Chandler Martin. I don't know what my URL is, but I think it's probably just Chandler Martin. And yeah, I'm gonna keep putting stuff out, and I'll put this predictive out, and hopefully people just smash it to smithereens, so that we can get to a better state here. Yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you, Nolan.
Thanks, bro.